I was just minding my business scrolling around YouTube the other day when I stumbled across a video that revolved around the Far Cry series. Because I was a fan of the series, I watched the video and it was great, well-spoken video, but there was one part that I took a little personal.
Number 1 on this list, Far Cry Primal. They really went all out with this game, decided to do a bunch of research. I can't continue this. Number 1 is Blood Dragon. I'm not even going to put Primal on this list. I haven't.
As you see, Far Cry Primal is one of my favorite games of all time. So I was even more upset when I went around the, oh my Jesus, do you want to stop? Do you want to stop that? Sorry. Stop meowing! Stop! I just gave you treats. Jesus. Alright. Oh my God. Okay. Back. Okay. I was even more upset when I went around forums and reviews with many fans saying that the game was bad. Alright? And I'm here to defend Far Cry Primal from the 3 things that most people seem to hate about this game. So let's run down the list, alright? We got repetitive gameplay, a really bad / short story. And third is the lack of variety with weapons. So let's start with repetitive gameplay. Now, whenever you buy an Ubisoft game, you are buying a game with a lot of repetitive gameplay. That's just how it is, okay? All the other games in the Far Cry series have a lot of repetitive gameplay. I don't really understand why this argument is more used against Far Cry Primal because it's basically in all the other Far Cry games. I guess one thing that makes Far Cry Primal a little different is the fact that resources are a lot more important. You have to collect a lot of stuff as you go across the world, but I don't really think this wasn't much of a problem because just roaming around the world was enough for me to collect all the resources I needed. And if I did need something, normally it wasn't really too hard to find. The wood, the ores, the rocks and stuff, they're all fairly prominent in the game. It's not like you're going to be going on a wild goose chase to try and find anything. I guess the fighting and missions may also be repetitive, but I think one thing about Far Cry Primal that makes it not repetitive like any other game is that there's a huge variety of terrains around the map. So you're never really fighting in an area that seems similar to a place that you've been before, which I'm not saying anything, but I'm just saying that in other Far Cry games, the terrains and areas around the world are pretty similar. That's all I'm going to say. The next main criticism against the game is that the story is bad and short. So maybe the story's kind of short. And maybe the characters aren't as memorable as they were in other games. That's all true, but let me just go through the rundown of the story if you don't already know. So you play as Takar, a member of the Wenja tribe in 10,000 BC. You meet up with a girl named Sayla or something like that, and you help her create a town for the Wenja while protecting the Wenja people from the Udam, who are basically Neanderthals, and the Izili or Izila or something like that. They're like the Aztecs. There are other side characters in the game, like the shaman, who you recruit to your village to help you. But for the most part, that's kind of the story. There's a couple missions where you go around the map and help people and sneak into the Udam base and stuff like that. And attack a Udam fort, kill the main bosses, stuff like that. There's some cool missions in here, but again, the story is pretty short. I think for many Far Cry fans, the fact that the 2 previous games of 3 and 4, they had really good characters and really good villains and really good stories, so to go from those games to Far Cry Primal, it's going to be kind of a downgrade, and I'll admit that. But the story is still solid in my opinion. It's not Red Dead Redemption, but it's not Assassin's Creed Unity either. I think this argument is just blown out of proportion a little bit, because overall the story was fine to me. The last major point against Far Cry Primal is the lack of variety with the weapons / weapons just in general. So in Far Cry Primal, there are 3 main weapons. You have the bow, the spear, and the club. Now, for a franchise to go from predominantly being a shooter franchise to now being limited to 3 primal weapons, that's a big jump, and I understand how a lot of people might be upset with that. If you go on forums, you'll see a lot of people who may not have played Far Cry Primal who are Far Cry fans, and they'll say, like, oh, I didn't play it because there's not any guns or anything in the game, which I kind of understand, but I don't know, it's weird. Why would you not play a game just because there's not guns in it? I don't know. That just seems like a weird turn-off to me. So, going back to the weapons, the bow and the club are exactly what you expect, while the spear offers a little bit of variety with the fact that you can throw it and attack with it. I personally never found the limited weaponry to be a problem. I'd say it's a weakness of the game, but that's something you give up when the setting is based in prehistoric times. So this argument is a valid one, and I can understand how it can be frustrating and maybe boring or whatever, but honestly, when you're playing a shooter game anyway, you're only using a limited amount of weapons in the first place. Like, if you're playing Call of Duty, there's a variety of weapons in that game, but it's like you're only going to really be getting good at certain weapons, right? So this argument makes sense, but I just don't think it's that good of one because, like I said, you're probably only going to use a limited amount of weapons that you like in the other Far Cry games, so why is that such a problem now? Now I wanted to bring to light some things that I love about this game. Firstly, the world. The world is absolutely breathtaking, especially for a game that's 4 years old. I mean, it looks great. It was the first game that I ever played. I literally stopped to look at the world because it was just so beautiful. Now, maybe I'm overhyping it a bit if you play it now, but for 2015, it was amazing, okay? I also wanted to point out that the game ran really smoothly for me, and the gameplay just felt really smooth. Other Far Cry games just never really gave me the kind of smooth gameplay that I think Far Cry does. I don't know, it just feels good. If you've ever played a racing game, you know what I mean when there's a big difference between a racing game feeling smooth and one that's not. The controls were never clunky, they just felt right. It just felt good to play, if that makes sense. Sometimes my arguments don't really make sense either, I will admit that. While Far Cry Primal isn't the typical first-person shooter with an open world, like other games in the series, Primal takes a huge creative leap into a setting and world for a game that we've really never seen before. The game isn't perfect, but you cannot deny its strengths outshine its weaknesses. And that's Far Cry Primal.